The flight attendant's voice crackled over the intercom, asking passengers to settle in and prepare for takeoff. In first class, where champagne flutes sparkled under soft cabin lights, a small commotion began brewing. Elijah Morgan, a sharp-dressed man in his early 40s, leaned back in his seat, his designer watch catching the light as he scrolled through emails on his tablet. Elijah was no stranger to luxury. As one of the youngest black billionaires in the world, he had climbed from humble beginnings to unimaginable heights. Yet tonight, all he wanted was to get home to his family. The murmurs started quietly. A few passengers craned their necks toward the front of the cabin, where two flight attendants exchanged tense whispers. Elijah barely noticed at first, focused on a presentation he was preparing for a meeting the next day. Then came the unmistakable sound of footsteps stopping beside him. "Excuse me, sir," one of the attendants said, her tone polite but firm. "Could you please come with me for a moment?" Elijah frowned, looking up. "Is there a problem?" The attendant hesitated, glancing at her colleague before replying. "We need to verify something with your ticket." He raised an eyebrow, confusion flickering across his face. "My ticket? It's right here," he said, reaching for the boarding pass tucked neatly into the pocket of his carry-on. Her smile was tight, her voice unwavering. "I understand, but we'll need you to step off the plane for this." Passengers around them began shifting in their seats, the tension palpable. Elijah felt a knot tighten in his stomach. Is this really necessary? I'm in my assigned seat, and everything is in order. The second attendant stepped forward, her voice softer but no less insistent. "Sir, this won't take long." Reluctantly, Elijah rose, feeling the weight of dozens of eyes following him. He grabbed his bag and followed the attendants down the narrow aisle, his mind racing. What was going on? He had flown with this airline countless times without issue. Was it a mix-up? A technical error? But as he stepped into the jet bridge, the truth began to dawn on him. Two uniformed security personnel stood waiting, their postures rigid. One of them held up a hand. "Mr. Morgan, we've been informed there's been a mistake with your booking. You won't be able to board this flight." Elijah's heart sank. A mistake? What kind of mistake? The man didn't flinch. "Your seat was double booked, and we've had to reassign it." "To who?" Elijah asked, his voice rising. "I pay for that seat. I've been sitting there for the past 20 minutes. The guard exchanged a glance with the attendant. "It's company policy, sir. First come, first served in situations like this." Elijah was stunned. "First come? I've been here since the gate opened." "Sir, we're going to have to ask you to leave," the attendant said, her tone turning curt. Anger bubbled up inside him, but he kept his composure. Elijah knew this wasn't just a clerical error. He had felt the looks when he boarded, the subtle undercurrent of judgment that he had grown all too familiar with throughout his career. This wasn't the first time he'd been treated differently, and he doubted it would be the last. With a deep breath, he straightened his jacket. "Fine," he said coolly, "but you'll be hearing from me." He walked away, his footsteps echoing in the empty terminal as the plane's engines roared to life. A wave of humiliation washed over him, but beneath it burned a fierce determination. He didn't know how yet, but Elijah was going to make sure this never happened again, to him or anyone else. What happened next would change the airline industry forever. Elijah Morgan paced the quiet terminal, his polished shoes tapping against the tile floor. The plane he had been forced off of was now taxiing down the runway, its lights blinking as it disappeared into the night. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, hesitating for a moment before answering. "Hey, baby," came the soft voice of his wife Camille. "Are you on your way?" Elijah sighed, running a hand over his neatly trimmed beard. "Not exactly. There's been a situation." "A situation?" Camille's voice sharpened with concern. "What happened?" "They kicked me off the flight," he said, the bitterness in his tone unmistakable. "Said my seat was double booked." There was a pause. "They what?" "Elijah, that doesn't make any sense. Did you talk to a supervisor? Someone higher up?" "They weren't interested in listening," Elijah replied, his jaw tightening. "They made it pretty clear they just wanted me off the plane." Camille let out a frustrated breath. "This isn't the first time something like this has happened, is it?" He didn't answer right away. She was right, of course. Over the years, there have been countless moments like this. Subtle slights, dismissive tones, and outright disrespect that he had learned to navigate with a calm exterior. But tonight felt different. It wasn't just about the inconvenience or the humiliation. It was about principle. "I'll figure it out," he said finally. "Don't wait up for me." "Elijah," Camille said softly, "you don't have to let this slide. You've worked too hard to be treated like this." Her words lingered in his mind long after the call ended. Elijah sat down in one of the uncomfortable terminal chairs, staring out at the now empty gate. His mind drifted back to where it all began. Those long nights working multiple jobs, the sacrifices his parents made so he could attend college, the relentless grind to prove himself in a world that often underestimated him. He hadn't just built wealth, he had built a legacy. His tech company, Morgan Innovations, was a household name, pioneering advancements in renewable energy and artificial intelligence. But despite his success, moments like this reminded him that no amount of money could shield him from prejudice. As he sat there, a thought began to take shape in his mind. What if this wasn't just another moment to brush off? What if he could turn this experience into something bigger, something that would challenge the very systems that allowed this kind of treatment to persist? His fingers hovered over his phone, and before he could second-guess himself, he opened his social media app. Elijah wasn't one for long rants or oversharing, but tonight felt different. He typed out a post, his words fueled by equal parts frustration and determination. Tonight, I was removed from a flight I paid for without a valid explanation. This isn't about the inconvenience. It's about the lack of respect and fairness. If they can do this to me, what about everyone else who doesn't have the resources or platform to fight back? It's time for change. Hashtag accountability, hashtag better for everyone. He hit send before he could change his mind. Almost immediately, the notifications started pouring in. Likes, comments, shares. His followers, a mix of fans, colleagues, and supporters, rallied around him, their own stories filling the comments section. That happened to me once. They didn't even apologize. Thank you for speaking up. This industry needs to do better. Elijah, you've got the power to make a real difference. Don't stop here. The response was overwhelming, but it wasn't until he received a private message from a former airline employee that things took an unexpected turn. The message was concise but revealing. Elijah, I used to work for that airline. What happened to you isn't an accident, it's policy. They overbook flights on purpose, and certain passengers are flagged as non-priority. It's wrong, and it needs to be exposed. Elijah stared at the message, his heart pounding. This wasn't just about a simple mix-up. There was a deliberate system in place, one that prioritized profit over people. He responded quickly, asking for more details, but the sender didn't reply. The next morning, Elijah woke up to find his post had gone viral. News outlets were picking up the story, and his phone buzzed with calls and messages from reporters wanting a statement. He ignored most of them, his focus now on something bigger. He spent the day digging deeper, calling contacts in the travel and aviation industry. What he uncovered left him both angry and inspired. Overbooking wasn't just common practice. It was standard. Airlines gambled on no-shows, and when flights were full, they picked and chose who to bump. The criteria weren't always explicit, but patterns emerged, patterns that disproportionately affected certain demographics. Elijah knew he couldn't let this go. He called a meeting with his legal team and PR advisors, laying out his vision. We're not just going to make noise about this, he said, we're going to change the game. His advisors exchanged uncertain glances. What exactly are you proposing? One of them asked. Elijah leaned forward, his voice steady. I'm going to buy an airline. The room fell silent. One of his lawyers finally spoke up. Elijah, that's a massive undertaking. Even with your resources, the logistics alone. I'm not doing this for profit, Elijah interrupted. I'm doing it because it's time for a new standard in this industry. An airline that treats every passenger with respect, that doesn't play these games of overbooking and hidden fees. If we can prove it's possible, the rest of the industry will have to follow. His team looked at him, seeing the fire in his eyes. They had seen it before, when he launched his first startup, when he pushed for renewable energy projects, when he donated millions to underserved communities. Elijah Morgan didn't do things halfway. Over the next few weeks, Elijah threw himself into the project. He began negotiations to acquire a struggling regional airline, one that had been teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. The deal wasn't easy, but Elijah's reputation and resources made it possible. Word of his plan spread quickly, and the public response was electric. Supporters rallied behind him, calling his vision a much-needed revolution. Critics, however, were quick to voice their doubts. Elijah Morgan thinks he can single-handedly fix an entire industry. Good luck with that. Another billionaire trying to play hero. Let's see how long this lasts. Elijah didn't let the negativity distract him. He knew the road ahead would be challenging, but he also knew that change never came easy. As the ink dried on the acquisition papers, he looked out over the empty hangar that would soon become the headquarters for his new airline. this was just the beginning. The real work was about to start, and Elijah was ready to prove that respect, fairness, and innovation could coexist in an industry long overdue for transformation. But not everyone was thrilled about Elijah's bold move. Behind closed doors, powerful figures in the airline industry began to take notice, and not in a good way.